What's growing on, gardeners? Another year has come to an end, and with the start of a new year means a brand new garden and the limitless possibilities that brings. That's why on today's video, I'm going to share with you a whopping 36 veggies that you can plant in January right now. Let's start off 2025 on the right foot and grow the biggest, best gardens of our lives.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
As a point of reference, I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, Zone 8B. However, you don't need to be in a mild winter zone to plant these things because the majority of what we're starting right now will be transplants. And the things that we do direct sow into our garden are incredibly cold hardy. If you need a little bit more cold protection, I'll show you how to build little hoop houses or how to use frost cloths to add significant cold protection. So more on that later. Some of you may not be taking me seriously right now because of what I am wearing, but I am dead serious in helping you grow the biggest, best garden of your life this year. I'm just in the spirit because I love this time of year because of all the new beginnings it brings. That's why I'm rolling out the big guns for Veggies 1 and 2. They are your bulbing onions and your shallots. Your onions and your shallots need to be one of the first things, if not the first things, you start every single year from transplant. I start these right around Christmas time, but if you haven't started them yet, you need to start them in seed cells in January. That's because your bulbing onions and your shallots are very sensitive to day length. They need to enter the bulbing process during the late spring, beginning of summer when temperatures are mild. That's because onions and shallots are very sensitive to day length. In order to get adequate bulbing, you have to have these enter the bulbing phase in late spring, early summer when your day length is maximum. If you plant them out too late, you will get inferior bulb size and small onions and small shallots. It's very important that you pair your bulbing onions to the latitude that you are at. There are short day onions, intermediate day onions, and long day onions. You have longer summer days, the higher your latitude. You have shorter summer days, the lower your latitude. So here in southeastern North Carolina where I live, I have to grow short day onions because my summer days aren't nearly as long as, say, somebody that lives in Minnesota or Massachusetts. So make sure you pick the right onions for where you live. I'll drop a link above and down in the video description for how to grow onions. It will help you a lot. As for shallots, they are pretty much all longer day, but I still get decent bulbing here in North Carolina. They're not going to be as big as if I lived up north, but I'm still pretty satisfied with the results. The key to growing successful onions and shallots is to get them out into the garden early. Because they take about 8 weeks to grow from transplant, that is why you need to start them at the very latest in early January, because I need to get these out into my garden in late February, at the latest early March. If you live south of me, you definitely want to get them in by March 1st. If you live north of me, you have a little bit more play, but no matter where you live, you probably need to get them out into your garden by March. If you're in a super cold zone, as soon as your soil unfreezes, that is probably when you want to plant your onion and shallot transplants. Veggies 3 through 12 that you should start right now are your brassica transplants like bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, kale, kohlrabi, mustard greens, and rapini, also known as broccoli rabe. Now, notice I said brassica transplants. Brassicas grow very well from transplant, and while they are quite cold hardy, they don't like really deep freezes that are, say, 24 degrees and below. After the mid-20s, they start to take damage. So for that reason, we actually want to start them indoors. That is why it is okay to start them in January. If you live in a very mild zone, like zone 9 or warmer, you can direct seed them at this point, but for zone 8 and colder, I recommend you start them indoors on a seedling heat mat somewhere around a 75-degree temperature for germination, and you will get really nice transplants that you can plant out into your garden after 6 to 8 weeks. If you live in a warmer zone, you may be able to grow brassicas throughout the winter. These are broccoli plants, and they're doing pretty well, but my cabbage got really beat up, even under cover, after 19 degrees that we had here. My mustard greens, Brussels sprouts, and my collards are a lot hardier than cabbage, so they are still doing pretty well. Here you'll see more collard greens, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage. Everything in this taller bed is doing a whole lot better. So this goes to show you, you can be successful growing brassicas all winter long, but if you're just starting seed, I still recommend you start them indoors from transplant just as an insurance policy. Veggies 13 through 20 that you can plant in January right now are your cold hardy root vegetables: beets, carrots, daikon, parsnips, radishes, turnips, rutabagas, and Swiss chard. Now, because these are root vegetables, they do very poorly from transplant. The vast majority of them do not like having their roots disturbed once they are planted. So for that reason, we are going to direct sow all of these outside in our garden. But luckily, all of these plants are extremely cold hardy. Most of them are good until about the 10 to 20 degree Fahrenheit range, but they can take even colder temperatures when you put a little agricultural fabric like this over them. Let me show you all the root veggies I have growing underneath this little PVC hoop house. We are having the coldest December that I have ever experienced here in North Carolina. We have had 2 19-degree nights and probably about a dozen nights in the 20s. And everything in this little hoop house is excelling and undamaged. Here I have beets and mature carrots. They are doing fantastic. Then next to it, I have dill and celery, believe it or not. That's how good these hoop houses work. They're actually protecting those veggies, which are not nearly as cold hardy. Then we have parsnips and more carrots. We have rutabagas, we have turnips, and then we have chard, and over here, even more carrots. Everything is 100% undamaged. Just beautiful. So that goes to show you the power of a little bit of 1 ounce agricultural fabric. So as long as your soil isn't frozen, feel free to direct sow all of those things out in your garden right now, and then put a little cover over them if it's going to get really cold at night. If your soil is frozen, you can build one of those PVC hoop houses like I just showed you, and you can put one of those agricultural fabrics over the hoop house, and it will build heat during the day and warm up that soil so it unfreezes over time. Then once it is unfrozen, you can go ahead and plant all of those things. I'll make sure to link to a video both above and down in the video description that will show you exactly how to build one of those PVC hoop houses with simple products from Lowe's or Home Depot. Veggies 21 through 25 that you can plant out in your garden in January are your cold hardy leafy greens: arugula, also known as rocket, leaf lettuces, mizuna, sorrel, and spinach. However, many of these need a little bit of an explanation because they come with a big but. Big but. For example, the big but of arugula is that it is very intolerant to warmth. It can take the cold, but it is the most bolt-prone thing that I grow in my garden all year. So for that reason, I can only grow it in the winter. It will start bolting on me in late February, early March. So it really doesn't like the heat. Now what you want to do with this is you want to direct sow it in rows, preferably underneath a row cover if you get a lot of frosts and freezes, and it will probably germinate in about a week, and you'll be able to start harvesting this only after 3 weeks. And then you'll take a pair of scissors, and then you'll cut the leaves down, and you can either stir fry it, add it to salads, whatever you want. Now, when it comes to lettuces, notice I specifically said leaf lettuces, not your romaine types or your big-headed types. Your romaine types actually don't like frost and freeze. We're talking your cold, hardy, red leaf lettuces. These do much better in the cold. And I've had great success with the varieties New Red Fire, Red Sails, Rouge d'Ivor, apparently I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I don't really know how to say it, and Marvel of Four Seasons. All of these things, for me, have survived well into the teens Fahrenheit. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is Giant Caesar romaine that I planted in late summer, and even though I covered it during all of our frosts and freezes, it still took a little bit of a beating. 19 degrees even under cover. It's still edible, but it's low quality now, and it really got injured. However, underneath this hoop house right here, I have lots of leaf lettuces growing. All of this is New Red Fire lettuce, and 19 degrees underneath this agricultural fabric did absolutely nothing to it. It is loving life, so I can come out here with some scissors and cut as much as I want. This is bulletproof in my Zone 8 winters, as long as I put a little cover overhead. And then right here, I have more lettuce that I sowed behind it that are just starting to come up. This head of lettuce that you see right here is actually a self-seeded volunteer Marvel of Four Seasons head of lettuce, and this is only insect netting. It is not even frost fabric, and you can see after 19 degrees, the Marvel of Four Seasons is completely unharmed. So this red leaf lettuce is awesome stuff. And the last big but I want to give you is for spinach. When it comes to growing spinach, there are varieties that are bred to stand in heat and varieties that are bred to take cold. So make sure if you have cold winters that you plant yourself a winter spinach right now. If you have very mild winters, or if you want to plant your spinach later in the year when you're entering spring and summer, get yourself a bolt-resistant one that is meant to stand in the heat and go to seed at a slower rate. Crops 26 and 27 that you should start from seed in January are leeks and bunching onions. Now, these are day length agnostic. You can grow these all year round because they are incredibly cold hardy, but they also take the heat as well, and they don't bulb. We harvest them for the greenery. So therefore, it doesn't matter when we plant these, and I include these two things in my lists year-round. Now, I do recommend you grow these from transplants just like you would bulbing onions or shallots, because the seeds are so small, they have trouble germinating in shallow soil out in the garden and can be blown away with wind and rain. Leeks and bunching onions are two of the easiest things that you will ever grow. Not only are they super cold hardy, but they basically have no insect pests because they stink just like an onion, and that sort of repels the pests. Now, all of these onions went through back-to-back 19-degree nights about 2 weeks ago, and the tips did get a little bit bronzed, but since then, they have grown back beautifully. You can see at the bottom of the onions here, there was a little bit of bronzing and dieback, but everything that is coming out of the center spear is completely green. These things can take way colder temperatures than 19 degrees. Now, the leeks, on the other hand, they didn't get damaged at all. I never cover leeks. Some leeks can survive below 0-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So absolutely stunning, and they're delicious as well. You will actually harvest the white portion at the bottom. That white central portion can be minced up and used as a very mild white onion, and then you can use the green tops to flavor soups and stews. So I never go without leeks in my garden. Crops 28, 29, and 30 that you should plant in your garden in January are your chicories like endive, escarole, and radicchio. These things are very underrepresented in the garden, and they are absolutely delicious. I have some radicchio that I planted just a couple of months ago from transplant, and you have to see how beautiful they are. Right behind the most beautiful bok choy that I've ever grown in green right there is my radicchio. This stuff sailed through the cold and just laughs at it. These are way hardier than brassicas for the most part, and just look at the beautiful variegation. That stuff is great chopped up into a salad. The radicchio you just saw is this beautiful variety called Maverick. And in that same family, you also have escarole and endive. I can't wait to plant this new escarole variety that I just got. Now, if you don't know what escarole and endive is, well, if you've ever had something like Italian wedding soup or chicken escarole soup, the greens in there is escarole. It's a bitter, peppery, earthy, but delicious stewing green. So if you're really into soups and stew seasons, and you like things like collards or mustard greens, you will absolutely love escarole and endive. Crops 31 through 34 that you should plant in January are your cold hardy annual herbs, cilantro, also known as coriander, chives, dill, and parsley. Now, earlier in the video in that hoop house right there, I showed you the beautiful dill that was growing. However, I have these cold hardy herbs scattered all about my garden. Here I have cilantro. Cilantro, these are all volunteers. I let my cilantro go to seed, and then I pick out the volunteers and I transplant them. I have never covered this cilantro, and it does absolutely fantastic. Now, next to this beautiful green cilantro plant is a dead or dying dill plant. I didn't cover that, and the back-to-back 19-degree nights killed it. However, over here I have some volunteer dill that's just coming up wild all throughout my garden that is totally unharmed. And that's because these two dill plants that you see right here, I threw these flower pots over them when we got those really, really hard freezes. And dill, as long as you protect it, it can survive all winter long. It is more cold hardy than you think. It's just not going to like 19 degrees unprotected, especially when it comes out of nowhere like it did for us in early December. It was just too much, too fast for the plants. When properly hardened off, mature parsley plants can take down to about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this plant unfortunately got burnt back because we got two 19-degree nights in early December out of nowhere, and the plant just wasn't prepared. It didn't have a gradual decrease in temperature, but it is coming back. You can see it is alive. Same thing with the other parsley plant I have planted over here. They got burnt back from the sudden plunge in temperatures, but they are alive and coming back. Veggie number 35 that you should start from seed in January are your super hot pepper transplants. Now, for most of us, January is going to be too early to start our sweet pepper or our traditional hot pepper transplants. I don't start mine here in North Carolina until the first week of February. But your super hot peppers that have Scoville units in the hundreds of thousands or millions are a different story. That's because your super hot peppers take a very long time to germinate and even longer to get growing. They really need a lot of sunlight and heat, way more than the other peppers. Now, last year, I made the tremendous mistake of starting my chocolate Trinidad scorpion peppers at the same time I did my others. And while the other transplants were ready to go out into my garden at the end of March, this one was not. And it grew so slowly in the cool springs in late March, early April, that it didn't actually produce any fruit for me until October. Way too late to actually enjoy it. So you really need to give these a big head start, at least a month head start before any of your other peppers. They're going to take a very long time to grow. They like 85 to 90 degree soil temperatures, and they like 85 to 90 degree ambient temperatures. You need a seedling heat mat for these to germinate, and you need to give them a lot of time. So make sure you start them early if you're into growing the super hots. And finally, Veggie 36 that you should start in January are transplants for celery. Celery is one of the longest germinating, slowest growing plants I have ever grown. The celery that I showed you in that hoop house, I started that in September, and it's finally getting going and crawling along. They take about a month to germinate and about another month or two before they even become significant enough as transplants. They really take their time. Now, celery is only mildly frost tolerant unless you grow them under a cover like I am, but you really need to give those transplants a good long time. So if you start your celery transplants right now in January, they probably won't be ready to transplant out into your garden until mid to late March, when frosts are becoming a lot less numerous and a lot less frequent. So by then, they will do fine with a cover over them. And that right there are 36 veggies that you can start from seed in January for the best New Year garden of your life. Now, I know that there was a lot of information in this video. There were a lot of different plants, but I don't expect you to grow all of these things. In fact, there are a few things on this list that I'm actually not growing, and I don't plan on growing them. I added this to this list in order to give you a wide range of things to pick from, so you don't have to go through the same boring lists out there. I put some interesting stuff on this list just for you to go out and try, and hopefully it excites you and it motivates you to grow the biggest garden of your life. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the seed varieties that I mentioned in this video, I'll place direct links down in the video description to help you find them. For everything in my garden that I use in real life, I have that linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link. You'll see all the products I use in my garden in real life. And while you're down there, you can also check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Oh no, it must be really cold outside, because Dale looks like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. Oh, it's early in the morning. Dale's just waking up. He's yawning. He's all bundled up because it's 35 degrees at night. And boy, doesn't he look cute.
And it's walk time!
He looks cute from his snoot to his patoot. All right, buddy. Enjoy your cold walk. Stay warm. Stay warm.